All right, so an impromptu Scream video here. Now, this is basically going to be a response to we watched the movie, of course, because we watched them, great guys, of course, and I did kind of have this idea post the release of the last Scream movie, where my ideas basically line up with his and what I think could occur. Now, it's not to say that this is legitimately going to happen, especially like I don't expect it to necessarily, but I'm gonna try to give my reasons as coherently as possible, especially since I'm just doing this kind of off the cuff, as to why I think it makes the most sense, to be perfectly honest with you. And that's basically the whole idea of Stu coming back. And it's like, well, okay, so first of all, I can understand the whole thought, be like, oh, well, why just bring back a character who we know is likely dead? It's like it's just fan service, this and that. Be like, I can completely understand that. But when you take a lot of things into consideration, it's like, okay, well, the franchise has been running for quite some time now, and it's not dealing with a lot of, you know, supernatural elements like Freddy and Jason sort of stuff where yeah, these are where these movies exist in that reality. It's more grounded. It's human beings just going around, just stabbing people and stuff. So how far can you really stretch the idea of like doing all these sequels to where you can have all these different killers all the time? And so I feel like it's actually more believable bringing back a character who could potentially survive, a TV to the head, as opposed to having, all these like almost dozens of people attacking the same people over and over again and like just setting themselves up, you know what I mean? Instead
Mm,
of having like so many different killers with all these different motivations, I would say it makes sense to probably just go ahead and bring back a character from the past who we know has been established, who's a legacy character from the original, and could potentially come back into where you already have some plot lines tied in where they already have a past with the main characters like Sydney and all of them. And since we already know for a fact that he was already set to be brought back in Scream 3, but of course, with situations they were going at the time, they changed the script, so they were going to do that way back in 2000, but didn't. And so when you reach this point in time, especially once you already have characters like Dewey killed off, it's like, so like where do you go from there? Like how do you keep it fresh but at the same time keep it like Scream? And to me, I feel like it does make sense if you do bring back a character like Stu who can pull the strings of other people. Because what I felt like by the end of the last Scream movie is that their performances were good. Like I always like it once the kills are revealed, they're just kind of doing their monologuing and just doing their thing. The performances were there, but I don't feel like they stood on their own as much as previous killers, you know what I mean? Like they did feel a little bit more like lackeys in their own right. Um and like I said, given where we're at now, I feel like it could make sense to do almost like a cultish type of thing to where, yeah, you do have someone there motivating them. And they kind of did this before with Scream 3, where they went back and said that Roman kind of planted the seeds for the events of the original Scream, but not quite to this extent. And so to me, I feel like it could actually work in its favor to say that you have someone pushing these other people into doing this, like says someone who's already kind of established in the lore, as opposed to, like I said, these newer people. Because if you think of their, and if this was like just its own film, like if they weren't going to do a follow up, like it's an anniversary Scream film, and it just being called Scream, and they were just trying to like remake the first movie and do that like their own version, that could probably work. But if you're going to do another like one or two sequels, like Scream 6 and 7, I feel like it makes sense to kind of go back to the idea of Scream 3, and but in this trilogy kind of have an overcast, like this feeling that someone else is already there pulling the strings. And as he stated in his video, Mike's video from We Watched the Movie, he did say, what if like the idea that that was Stu in the hospital that killed Dewey? And to me, I feel like that would be a more earned kill from a character from the
yeah, and then
past.
the whole line, it was an
Yeah,
honor.
yeah, it was an honor because it does play into that line and make more sense. And I feel like, especially once you kill off a character like Dewey, who's like the heart of the series, and as I said, I felt like after watching the last movie, he feels like the most tragic character of the three between even more so than as Sydney herself, because yeah, because he's always just been kind of like the heart of the town. He's always been, I mean, he's always been killed almost multiple times more so than Sydney. Like he's been stabbed and all that stuff. He's, they almost killed him off in the original and in the second one and stuff like that. And you see where he was at in the last movie, like being, estranged from Gale. They're not really together. He's still stuck in a town. He's just kind of, and he was kind of like the last hope for these newer characters coming in. And so you see him get killed in that fashion. And if you think about it, I feel like it makes more sense for it to be a more earned kill from someone who's a stronger killer. Like as I said, because the newer killers just didn't feel like they could have earned that kill. You know what I mean? And so, especially when you think of that line, it was an honor. And if you were to go back later on, like 6 or 7, or particularly the seventh one, and say like, oh yeah, that was like a twist. That was actually Stu present there, doing the deed, against Dewey and getting that kill. And I feel like that would add more weight to that particular kill as opposed to the one girl who's just like, oh, she's a crazy little bitch, whatever. You know what I mean?
So that you saying that makes me think not for number 6, but for 7.
Yeah.
And because, like, say in 6,
Mm-hmm.
he gets away,
Yep.
or assuming that it's him, and then the reveal
Yeah.
in 7, and then he harkens back to that, like
Exactly.
but wait, but in like a taunting sort of fashion. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah, because
That
that's
would
exactly what
work.
Mike said. And the funny thing is that, like so you could throw the theories around and all that stuff, and you could think of this stuff. But honestly, like I had like the identical idea of what he had for that. Because to me, again, it's changing things up from the Scream formula, but at the same time keeping it within the realm of what's already been established. Because, like I said, how many new killers can you really bring in? And if you're really gonna try to, at least keep them on par with the previous killers, like Matthew Lillard, Timothy Oliphant, and people like this, is that you're really gonna have to bring in some strong characters. And like I said, the last ones they didn't quite hit that point to where they're gonna be as memorable. And so I feel like in order to like it, because you're really gonna wear it thin if you just keep bringing in new killers with new motives and stuff like that. So unless you have someone there that can actually like push them into that, if anything, as like lackeys, then it would make sense again to have that one present character that's been there to kind of like I said pull the strings and push them into that, and so you can have like that bigger fish by the end of the trilogy to they have to kind of take out. And so that's why I feel like again it makes sense to actually do have a killer get away by the end of the next movie, to where say either at the beginning of Scream 6 or at the end where Gale actually does die, and then yeah you get that tease of like a phone call to Sydney, because she doesn't have to be present in the whole next movie. She could show up maybe towards the end, like say, get the phone call and been like, "Well, I killed your other friend Gail. I got away with it this time, so you're just gonna have to come back and then deal with me if you want this shit to really end," or something like that. And so that sets the stage for Scream 7, so you can actually get a nice big reveal. And everything plays in nicely, not just in these newer films, but to films of the past by bringing in this Stu character, and
Yeah,
considering
like a
also,
cat and mouse showdown in the last one.
yeah, exactly. Like, and even though, like I said, we can theorize and think about it, but to me, again, it, even though something can be predictable, that doesn't necessarily make it like not worthwhile. It just what you think makes the most sense and how it's executed and how you can really just draw people in. Because again, if you just keep bringing in these new characters, then that wears just as thin and seems less believable than, like I said, just bringing Stu back. Because I mean, it just plays into the overall plotting of these types of films, and I just feel like it works where it changes things up just enough, but keeps it within that realm of what we know and what we love about Scream. And so I just,
I feel like that going off of the whole like cultish idea,
mm-hmm,
so far it's been like the lackeys doing it, these, since the beginning.
yeah,
I don't know at what point, because obviously he had to recover in the hospital, so to speak,
yeah,
or when all that would have started to play into the timeline. But
mm-hmm,
the lackeys, this, that, the other. So in 6, I feel like at one point there would be like, I don't know, 3, 4, or more in the getup. I don't know straight off the bad, or like they're surrounding somebody's house. Like you pop up in the one window and you turn, there's another one there, and another, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not physically possible to run
Yeah, I
all
mean
that.
that's what they played into in the
And
past,
then,
like you said, because
but
you didn't know there were two killers. And it's like, oh well, this could be this person, but they were doing this at the time, and
yeah, so in the next one, it stands to reason, okay, then you have all of them, but one of them is the leader. You don't know that.
mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I feel like it would be like that, but the little ones get like picked off or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, by the end, like the kind of semi reveal, he kills somebody, gets away, and then that whole thing. I
Yeah,
feel
I
like
mean, because
that would
like in
work.
Scream 6, like I said, you can have a couple of strong characters by the end. Like I said, maybe, like I said, one or two killers get axed off, and it maybe seemed like, oh, well, that was actually seemed maybe easier. And
Yeah,
as
what's
far as
going
like their monologue
on?
had been like, maybe one of them says, been like, oh, well, I didn't have a motive, but like, there is no motive, kind of harkening back to the original or something like that. And like I say, you could just set up for like a teaser or a phone call, being like, wait a minute, who the hell is this? And it's a ghost face. You're like, what the fuck? And like I said, you just kind of end it there and going into that because, like I said, it plays into the formula
Hmm.
what is it, but changes things up just enough to make things more exciting
Yeah,
and stuff.
you gotta have the, so like at the very end, if like bouncing off what I
Hmm.
was just saying, for the reveal phone call, you gotta have the hello Sydney.
Yeah,
I
and like I
It's
said,
gotta be in there.
and like with the whole thing of like whether or not she's coming back or not, and supposedly it was also recently confirmed, possibly that maybe they actually did get her back for this one, and she supposedly could have a bigger role in seven. Which, like I said, it just plays into that whole setting up because where she doesn't have to be in the entirety of the next film, she doesn't have
Mm-mm.
to. And like I said,
No.
and even with this whole dispute of like her money or whatever, she doesn't necessarily had to be present in six like at all. But they could have settled that and have her come back for seven and still give her a last, you know, hurrah and all that type of stuff. But another thing too, another big point that also plays into this, if you remember the main girl that we were following in this last movie and how they're setting up with her seeing the visions of Billy and even what when she was stabbing her boyfriend at the time, the killer at the end of the last movie, and showing like her literal killer instinct to where they're kind of setting up to where it's just like, wait, could this girl really be a killer in her own right? Like, could she be crazy like her father? And I could see that being played into an angle by the end of by the end of the next movie, Scream 7. Like, say you reveal Stu, and then he's like, talking to her, and he's just like, it's like, see, you get that killer instinct. You saw what you did to your boyfriend once he told you he was a killer, right?
Your
You
dad would
you
be
could be like
proud.
my Billy, except this time I'm the mastermind. I'm the leader. I'm not giving into the peer pressure. I'm the one pulling the strings, not Billy, because I always did what Billy did, and you saw what happened to me. But you could be my new Billy in a sense. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're literally in his bloodline. So I could see that type of dialogue going back and forth. So it's like, so we can stop here. We can kill Sydney. We can be the ones coming out on top of this. So you can like play into that because they set it up that way to where, they're going to have to play off of that some way or another, showing that she has this killer side to her. Like, can she be like her father? Does she have the means to go forward and doing something like that? That could be an angle too. She could wind up being a killer, or that could be part of it.
Uh, I would want to see him get hit with a phone again in some sort of way. Be like, oh,
That
stop,
would be
not
fun.
again.
Yeah, like just throw a cell phone in his face. Like you could do
Can't
a
believe you
callback
hit
to
me with
that.
the phone.
Now that would be a fun fan.
Because that was my very, very,
Like if
very
there was a
favorite
fan
part.
service moment, like just do
That
that.
would be
Like just
it.
like straight at his head, like dead center, being like, "Fucking hit me with the phone, bitch." You just do that instead. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for real.
But yeah, I mean, so it's not about like bringing Stu back just for the sake of bringing Stu back. It's like because when I really do think about it and what makes the most sense, I just feel like it falls better into the realm of of the possibilities again, as opposed to bringing in like another 2 to 4 different killers by the end of the seventh film with all these different motivations. And there could be some other angles that I don't see that they could be thinking of. I don't know. But again, at the same time, I do feel like, because again, it just helps tie all the films together. But again, you can just change up the formula just enough by giving us a tease in the next movie. You can kill off Gale. But of course, by the end of seven, don't kill off Sydney because she is the survivor. She's gone all this way, especially now that since she has kids. you can't kill her off. She can be the lone survivor of the original group. So yeah, you can kill off Gale in the next one at this point, as long as it works. And I felt like the Dewey kill in and of itself did work, but I felt like in order for me to fully appreciate it and go along with it, I would like it more if it was a more established, more stronger killer like a Stu, to where it just, again, it adds a little bit more weight to it.
I
And
think
it adds for a really nice twist when you go back and look at it. It's like, that scene is so much better now. It's an honor. And it's just so much more badass when you think about it that way.
I think the only way to make it work if you kill off Gale is you can't really do it right away or even
Yeah, I
halfway
feel
through.
like,
It has to be like at the end
yeah, at the end
to
where it seemed like
segue and
everyone,
make
it seems safe, and then like I said, you get that last like kill in, and it's like, oh shit, Gale's dead, and then you, yeah, just
just
set that up.
that because it would make seven make more sense to have Sydney and this crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and because
So
like, cause everyone's arguing like, said, whether or not Scream can survive without singing. It's like, yeah, sure it can, but like I said, you have to
it's
think
just not
about
gonna be the same.
the overall plot though. Yeah, but it's also about picking your battles and not overly doing it. Because like I said, if you want to be just fresh enough, but at the same time appreciate what's there, because all this shit's tied together. All this shit has been, it's been a domino effect since the first movie. So you, again, you can't just go into new sets of people all the time with all these new killers. It just doesn't work as much because, again, it's not Freddy, it's not Jason, it's not these different groups coming
No,
in. It's like, again, it's just been a long-lasting domino effect through all these years. And so to me, again, you can have Sydney out of the picture being like, yeah, I'm done with this. I finally did this. And so you can have the new group being terrorized by them. But like I said, have Gale maybe play a smaller part in the next movie, but like I said, by the end, where it seemed like everything's all well and good, she gets killed, and then you get the tease for Sydney by the end. Then like, okay, if you want this to really finish, you're gonna have to come back and face me. And then, like I said, it just sets up a nice tease, and like I said, it spares using Sydney. And like I said, you can set the stakes a little bit higher by killing off another established character like Gale by the end of that one. And like I said, you bring in Stu as opposed to just another random killer with these, again, X amount of motivations and just kind of just throwing stuff out there. It just all plays very well into each other. So by the end of this trilogy, everything feels very cohesive and feels like it makes a lot more sense going forward because of all these years building up, especially since like Scream 4. It's just good to have that one character who could be the one to show growth from where they were originally and what could have happened to them, and seeing where they are now as being a mastermind. It just works better, I think,
yeah,
honestly.
I really think for six and then into seven that's like the best way to go because seven would be like a knockdown drag out fight like the end of that movie kind of like how I imagine Halloween ends happening
Yeah.
between the two of them and
Yeah, I feel like
that one's hard to call.
yeah,
I
because
don't
I feel
know,
like it does build the
but
stakes to where,
yeah,
because obviously, the ghost face, anybody can be ghost face, but that persona, like I said, of course, carries over where it feels like, yeah, it's this one soul entity. But if you give someone, like I said, if someone's Stu who's been there since the beginning, it does give kind of like that Laurie Michaels sort of dynamic.
yeah,
And like I said, because you're stretching it much thinner as it is when you keep bringing in new killers. Because like I said, even the last killers, like I said, they just barely scrape by as being believable as far as that. Because again, it feel like it makes more sense to where if they did have someone pulling the strings on them, and pushing their buttons as opposed to just them acting alone. Especially if you're doing a 6 and a 7, you're going to stretch that way thinner that way unless you bring in someone like a Stu character to really nail the point home. And like I said, just change up the formula where you're teasing for the next movie and you really set yourself up for a grand finale for like the entire series. It just works better for me, honestly. It's not just about fan service, but that's just me.
and I think what would be kind of fun is I know they harken back to oh I just blanked on his name.
Which one?
My favorite guy from the original.
Uh, Billy? What?
No, um,
Stu? What?
no, movie nerd.
Oh, Randy.
Randy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
So if they had like a little blip of him, like his niece. That was the
His niece and
relation.
nephew.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Like if they stumbled across, they're trying to figure out what you got to do. Okay, and they stumble across like his stash of like
mm-hmm.
stuff, and there was like a tape that they never saw, and that kind of would tease well, because he knows the rules and all this stuff, like well, someone could be in charge pulling, you know.
Yeah, I mean, because they kind of did
And
do that in
then
Scream 3 because they were talking about trilogies, and
if you
this,
want to bring
and since
back
this
an
is
OG
technically a new
character,
trilogy, to where it's just like the past will come back to bite you when they ask. Whatever you think you know about the past, forget it. It just plays into that. And they
yeah,
probably, I mean, if they wanted to, I don't know if they will, but if they wanted to do a new Randy tape and de-age him, I mean, they did it with Billy
they
throughout the
can deep
film,
fake
and
that.
like did it to where it's just like he's a ghost, which some people are like, it's a bit iffy. It's like, yeah,
They could
sure,
totally deep
you
fake
could do
that.
that
Come
and just
on.
mostly just play audio if you wanted to, maybe. But yeah, like it just plays
Oh
into the
yeah,
whole.
yeah. You could easily have like a
It
little
could just play into the
tape that
idea
he recorded or
of
something.
like I said, the
Yeah,
trilogy idea. It and like I said, yeah. So at the end of the day,
that'd be
it's
pretty
not just
cool.
about wanting Stewie to come out just for the sake of it, and like I said, and wanting Sydney, because like I said, you can have her play, yeah, definitely a smaller role. And from what the new rumblings are about her, it plays into that idea to where
It
you
makes
use
the
her very
most sense.
sparingly in the next film, but then you set the stage for everyone to come back in. You raise the stakes. You kill off Gale. You tease the next Ghostface where they actually do get away, and like I said, you're. I feel like you're set. Like I said, even though I'm explaining it flat out now, that doesn't make it bad. It just makes it sensible and just makes for a really solid plotting, if you ask me. Because all of this, like, we can look past a fucking TV to the head, honestly, compared to some other things. And like I said, you're stretching it way thinner if you just bring in so many different killers. Be like, oh, Sydney, yeah, fuck her, you know, blah blah, because I want to be a killer. It just works better if you ask me, and it just I don't know.
Yeah,
That's the
I can
idea. So
see in six she has a small role.
yeah,
Like they try calling her to say, "Hey, what do we do?" And I'm like, "I don't want nothing to do with this." And then by the end, like I was saying, like, if they get Gail, and then it's like, "Hey, hello, Sydney,"
yeah, and you
and
just cut the
then like
black,
that
and
little bit, couple of minutes
it's just like,
there,
oh
and then
shit, now I gotta show up for the next one.
yeah, yeah, that would absolutely work, and just yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we'll just cut off right there. Just give my explanations and just again, I just feel like it works better. It's not just about fan service. I just feel like
No,
it
it's
legitimately it would play very very well in the way they set themselves up and just the possibilities and like I said with the last girl just being, you know, a possible killer herself. Uh, I just feel like it just plays way better with those angles as opposed to just new killers. But anyway, I'll cut off right there. That's my ideas for the next couple of Scream films.
in mine
Yeah,
too. It's
yeah,
not just you, bruh.
yeah. Okay,
Bruh.
yeah. So I'm right there with Mike. So yeah, shout out to We Watched the Movie, and yeah, we'll see you around. Thank you.